Our first speaker is Dr. Vaibhav Sethi, vitreoretina consultant at Arunodaya Desarath Eye Hospital, Gurgaon, and Dr. Sethi's Eye Center, and also visiting consultant in Apollo Eye Hospitals. And he is going to be telling us about a curious case of subretinal fluid. On to you, Dr. Vaibhav.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, panel. And it's my honor to be here presenting in front of everyone. I'm just sharing my screen. Yes, am I visible, ma'am?
Yeah.
So this is a curious case of subretinal fluid. And so this was a 59-year-old female with decreased vision in both the eyes since the last 6 months. She was having gradual, painless, and progressive loss of vision with no systemic history. She came to us in October last month. And the right eye, the vision was 20/80, best corrected, left eye 20/60. Anterior segment showed PCIOL with a mild PCO in the right eye and NS2 cataract in the left eye. This was the fundus picture in both the eyes. It was the fundus at the macula showed large confluent drusens and also drusenoid pigment epithelial detachments and overlying pigment mottling and pigment changes in both the eyes. However, there was no history of, there was no evidence of hemorrhage or exudation on clinical examination. On the OCT imaging, it was a bit surprising to see subretinal fluid there. So this patient's right eye scan showed confluent pigment epithelial detachment with hyperreflective homogeneous reflectivity underneath, suggestive drusenoid PEDs and overlying subretinal fluid. And also along with that, there was subretinal hyperreflective material. These are the radial scans of the right eye, which showed the same thing. The subretinal fluid was at the apex as well as the crypts or the angles of the drusenoid pigment epithelial detachments. There was also presence of intraretinal hyperreflective foci. Similarly, in the left eye, there was significant subretinal fluid, and also along with the sub-RPE hyperreflectivity, there was also some amount of hyporeflectivity. And along with that, in the left eye, there was also evidence of one area of RPE discontinuity, maybe an RPE aperture. So both the eyes, an OCT interpretation of drusenoid PED, overlying subretinal fluid, subretinal hyperreflective material, and acquired vitelliform lesion was noted. An FFA was done for the patient to rule out any choroidal neovascular membrane or any pathology. And on the angiography of both the eyes, there was no leakage seen. However, there was just very mild staining seen in the late phase. That's all. So provisional diagnosis of non-neovascular age-related macular degeneration with subretinal fluid was made, associated with acquired vitelliform lesion. The management in such a case was close follow-up, and patient was asked to review back this week after 6 weeks. So patient came back this week, few days back. This was the picture 6 weeks later in both the eyes. Vision remained the same. The clinical picture was the same. There was no fresh hemorrhage or exudation seen in either of the eyes. And as compared to the first visit, the OCT scans in the right eye had similar features, similar amount of subretinal fluid. The parameters are very similar in both the eyes. And similarly, in the left eye also looking at the area of the RP aperture or the RP discontinuity, which was very similar. So there was nothing else that happened in the last 6 weeks. So the further plan of
1 minute remaining.
Close monthly follow-ups, along with a plan of maybe doing an OCT angiography, which might give a better insight to what's happening. And as of now, and maybe in the future as well, there would be no need of anti-VEGF therapy. So this would be my take-home message for this patient or anything, that anti-VEGF therapy is not necessary in every case of subretinal fluid. It could actually be a non-neovascular AMD. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vaibhav. Would you have Dr. Raj Narayan discussing?
I think he's driving.
Yeah. No, can you hear me? Thank you so much. Actually, this is a very interesting case, very challenging also. And Vaibhav has made a very nice attempt to showcase all the problems which can be seen in this kind of case. The main thing is that whether the CNVM is there or not, should we be giving anti-VEGF injections or not. But very nicely brought out that there is large drusen, multiple drusen, and you are seeing those hyper-reflective dots. So the hyper-reflective, some are iso-reflective, and there is definite subretinal fluid. In one publication in 2017 by Jordi Moniz et al., where they described about drusen ooze, which are usually iso-reflective dots on the OCT and also can be associated with hyper-reflective dots. What you need to be careful about is that these patients are at a very high risk of geographic atrophy, and not just geographic atrophy, they can also develop CNVM in due course of time. And to pick it up very early is going to be a huge challenge, because OCT angiography is not going to be very useful in such lumpy, bumpy cases where you will have segmentation artifacts. But overall, I would say that yes, these are challenging cases to differentiate from a pure non-exudative or non-CNVM AMD. So this is a very challenging case, and I would observe them very closely over the next few years.
Raja sir, since OCTA, as you said, because of those the huge drusen or the lumpy drusen, there might be an artifact. So will an ICGA in these kind of cases, they try to help, because OCTA, if it is not elusive, then FFA has shown nothing, but still will ICGA doing it help in these cases?
So FFA definitely has not picked up, for probably the most important reason that there is no CNVM at this time. In terms of ICG would be in a sense that yes, if there is a CNVM and you are looking for one, it may pick up. But overall, I would say that if it is not picking up, again, if you do an ICG, it's not going to be a CNVM in these cases. But overall, ICG, yes, if you have a polyp, a kind of a hot spot, then those are the cases where it would be easier to pick up on an ICG, either a RAP or a hot spot. But with such large drusen, and if you want to detect a very early net, again, it may be.
What would be the visual acuity?
This case brought up the challenge of OCT angiography. OCT angiography, many people think that will diagnose many things, but it has its own challenges. But yes, ICG, most people don't access or don't use it. That's the other challenge that we have.
What would be the visual acuity predictors in these cases? Like that seems to be the only way to judge how the disease is going.
Not just visual acuity, there are some clinical components, like definitely if you see a subretinal hemorrhage, that's a clear indicator that it's converting into neovascular AMD. The other indicators are that if you start seeing the drusen to disappear, then, and also if there are exudates which are forming, then they are clear indicators that they are likely pointers towards neovascularization. Obviously on OCT or OCTA, if you start seeing a double layer sign, you start seeing a hyper-reflective kind of layer under the RP, then they are again pointers towards the neovascularization.
Okay. So we have last 30 seconds. Anybody else want to make a quick comment?
Yeah, I would say that these may not even be fluid, especially when they are between two elevations. This might just be a lucent space. And I have many patients who have 6x6 vision despite this kind of appearance over years. So they can be just observed closely. And it may be just fluid, lucent space without fluid.
Okay. Thank you. We shall now go on to a very nice presentation, Dr. Vaibhav.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Nice case.
And